these pictures, okay. Time-wise, how long, I mean, ideal weather conditions. Time-wise, how long would it take to go from Federal Channel into the harbor and then to do around the moorings in the harbor? So that from a safety point of view.
You mean
Like would be
to the
another
launch
month?
ramp like Alfred had suggested?
Yeah.
They could do that in one dredging season,
So is that, so that is still 3 months?
yes.
They couldn't get it done, like Federal comes in and does it, and we have an extra month in the dredging season, we couldn't like get anything done?
No, not
The
unless
state was all
all the
on board.
permits are in
Well,
hand.
if they were, like how long physically
But-
does it take?
To do the little area that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Probably maybe a couple of weeks, depending
Okay.
on the weather.
Okay,
It's all weather driven. I mean, if it blows 40
Right.
for 3 weeks, the
You don't
dredge
get
scout's not
anything.
going down the bay.
yeah,
Once it's full,
Yeah.
that's the end of it.
yeah,
Unless you had multiples.
Even then, they don't bring that many scows because they usually only have a couple because they leapfrog them. Because if you look at this map, it shows that there's a huge, I guess we're calling it the town north, not the anchorage, because there's nothing anchored in that.
I think they call that the town anchorage. Yeah.
Okay. But the problem, I'm not saying there's a problem. My concern is the dredges are gonna show up. People think that the harbor's gonna be open. And it's
That they're
gonna,
gonna be able to see a difference that.
the launching ramp is not gonna see a difference. You're not gonna get to the public float. That's what you see my concern? I mean, I don't know whether or not we should be talking to the Corps to see if, I don't know how to answer this question, but you see my concern?
yeah,
I think that we possibly could ask, once the Corps gets all their permits in hand and everything, maybe make an amendment to it for an emergency dredge, see if they'd be amenable to that would, hit the edge of their job. Conceivably, to put something in through here, I don't think it'd take that much time.
No, because the equipment will be here.
Yeah,
The other
that's the
option,
thing, once the equipment's here, they paid like $1 million more demob. So if they could do that portion rather than wait for another year, maybe even 2 years, when we start the state project, they may be, agreeable to do something like that for us, if we stress the emergency situation that it is.
I don't,
know, that's something I could ask the Corps. But right
Yeah.
now, I'm in the process of trying to get all the permitting and everything straightened out for them so that they can proceed with their $5 million project.
Mike, can I ask a different question? Sort of in line with that. Is there, because we talked about this when, for example, we were talking about the town potentially taking over the project and doing it ourselves. Is there an ability to add a subcontract? In other words, just tag on to their contract and add additional scope to it that
To
could
the
be done,
federal?
yeah, within the time frame that we're talking about.
That's something I could discuss with the Corps.
if not with the Corps, I think maybe where you're coming from, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if I was the one who got the Corps bid, does that mean that through a different funding source, while I'm here, the Corps doesn't want to be open to that? Could we use state and our money to go into that section? So that we're not having a different contractor here. It'd be nice it would be huge if the Corps was part of it, but if the Corps flat out said no, the question is whoever comes to the Corps, would they be willing to take our money, which I believe they would, providing the dredge window's still open to do this.
It's
So
just, it's adding scope to the contract. That's
yes, but at that point, would it be more enticing for the state to give us money in different years? I don't know. See my question? If we ask for a quarter of the money for this,
I got the feeling from them that spreading it out was beneficial to the state.
so
And when somebody said about HED, I just remembered what that is because it
Housing,
references J-Ash.
Yeah.
It's housing and economic development, because they're looking at this as an economic development.
But at that point, I'm not saying that's what to do, but I think that because of our tight window, if the contract could be scoped out, and if we had to pay for it, see if that's where we could start. I would prefer, I agree with Mike totally, I think it'd be huge to say we have an emergency problem. You know, document what happened the other day, document what would happen if we were 20 minutes later, or whatever the amount of time. It wasn't a very big tide, I don't think. Or what I'm saying is show the window that you couldn't have got there for that reason. You know, those two are very lucky to still be alive.
The only reason the Corps would say no is if the weather was to turn. They have no reason to say no to you. They probably realize the emergency and, you know, the nature of it. They're here, they've got the equipment, they've got the manpower. I simply think that they, you know, would be gracious to add it on. But, you know, if the weather blows bad while they're here and they're struggling to get that channel done, then, you know, none of it flies.
Out of luck, yeah.
No, I don't, but the question I would have is the Corps gonna go into a state permit, as long as the permits were valid? I don't, what I'm
Right.
saying is,
Yeah, because it's not their job.
it's not their jurisdiction.
Right.
But I mean, we're happy to have them,
Huh?
we'd be happy to have them.
Yeah, and I bet they'd be gracious enough to do it if they're here and they've got the manpower, who knows?
And then you have to have a plan B if the weather's bad.
I can't see them.
So, I know you guys aren't weather forecasters, but what would typically be weather issues that would cause them to not be able to do this?
Hurricanes?
Is it wind?
Not necessarily a hurricane, there's gonna be an amount, there's an automatic amount of wind they're gonna just stop at, because they can't tell the scows.
Yeah.
And direction too.
Yeah, the direction
Yeah.
will affect, I mean, you know, in a north wind, you'll be able to go, go down the bay like hell, and then, you know, it's hard to get back, but it's empty, so it's all gonna be that tide and wind oriented. I mean, I don't know whether a 20 mile an hour or 30, I mean, that's not my,
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know what they,
If you guys were projecting, how many days do you think is it typical that would be?
They'd miss probably 40 days, maybe would be,
we lost at least that this year.
From
So
September
easily
to
a third of
December?
the days could be unusable.
lost, yeah.
Okay.
October, we had lousy, it blew all the time. 1st of November, I mean, it was. But I don't know whether that level was enough to stop, I think it was, but I don't know, I can't answer that.
it stopped you.
Yes, we didn't go fishing.
Well, you were delayed in getting all your stuff out.
Not in the harbor, I mean, the stuff that goes down back, the lobster, us fishing down back. There was days that there was a whole week where we didn't go fishing. Week and a half at one point. And then, you know, there was 3 days it was nice, which is fine if the scows are full. But I mean, I'm not saying, you know, no, as far as us in the inner harbor, if it's blowing 40, we can get the boats out of it. I mean, that's not gonna stop me, okay? You know, it's just the fact that we are gonna be dependent to get out early. It's not gonna be a lot of fun because we are stuck for the same tide. You know, we can't haul all day long. Some days we're gonna lose 4 hours in the middle of the day. Some days we're gonna lose 4 hours in the beginning and 4 hours at the very end of the day. So I mean, we're gonna have to take all that into consideration. I mean, I expect it not to be a joy. But it's, you know, it's the outcome that we're looking for. That's why I question the fact that everything's gotta be out anyways. If somehow getting to the launching ramp, I shouldn't say that, getting to make sure we have emergency access.
Well, that will be something that I'll definitely run by the Army Corps.
Yeah, I think especially where you had, you know, and it's more apparent because you had this problem this week. I mean, we can always say it might happen. Not anymore, we can say it did.
It did happen.
Yeah, well, and remember too that the last few times we've talked, the Army Corps did say at one time that if we didn't get funding from the federal government, that we could hire them, right? Even as a consultant with our own equipment, or hire them for more money, probably do, we didn't go into what part of the job it would be. But, there he is.
No handshaking.
Okay, no,
Good Lord.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
very-
this isn't a bad prostate problem, it's hydraulic oil.
I'm just,
Yeah, we got that squared away.
Oh, by the way, Dennis, we're being recorded now. We are.
Nothing unusual for
Okay.
Dennis, hello.
Okay, so to catch you up, we're just, you know, we got dredging funding.
$5 million
And then we were just,
for 220.
yes, yeah. So we're also discussing that if possible, if the Army Corps would consider doing emergency funding, especially since we had the incident last week with the boat.
And I don't
Sinking.
even know about that.
Yeah.
That's new to me, but go ahead.
If they could go into the inner harbor. So are we calling this the inner harbor? What do you, I want to get all the names that everybody uses.
This is what they call the town anchorage.
And what do they call this? This is the federal.
This is the town
North
Anchorage,
Anchorage.
okay.
North Anchorage,
Okay.
this is the south.
So I'm thinking that we'll discuss asking them, Army Corps, especially if the weather was right or something and they're already here, could they just do a little bit more? Or, as I was reminded, the Army Corps said that we could hire them, if we didn't get federal funding, we could hire them either as a consultant or to do the work. And so we're kind of just right there discussing how we could mesh that together. And then Jack Units, do they have the equipment yet? They don't have the
They
equipment
have 3
yet.
pieces of equipment, and they just approved purchasing a 4th piece of equipment. And they're, one of the things that came up at my Thursday meeting, Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative, because I asked the question, I said, you know, what's the status of dredge equipment? And they've worked out apparently Plymouth has a shallow water dredge that we can cooperatively use as well, that's specifically shallow water and doesn't get used very much.
Only
So-
because I'm trying to do as much as I can. Is the 4th piece, is it designed for shallow?
Yes.
Is it a mechanical or is it still hydraulic?
I'm not sure, I think it's mechanical.
And it has to be,
And
because that's written into the order of
That's
conditions.
right.
I think it's
It has to be
mechanical.
mechanical, it can't be
And-
suction.
And they were specifically, looking for a piece of equipment that would support our project. So,
That would be
Nice.
just ducky.
Yeah.
so,
Because if they don't have it, they're up the creek.
yeah, so anyway, I did get a,
Jack Units from the Barnstable County sent it to me earlier.
Thank you.
and what they suggested was, and I don't know who on the committee it would make sense to interface, but basically, to get into the technical discussions, they recommended talking to Steve Tebow, who's the assistant TA. He's actually handling all that, to get into the very specific stuff around the equipment that's being procured, how much they can support us, during what time frames, whether
And how many
Plymouth,
yards
what
it
Plymouth can
it
do.
handle over,
So,
let's just say a week. It would give us a range to know if, even if it was mechanical, it would be worthwhile instituting it and getting it to go. If it won't do X amount, it wouldn't be a good way to spend money.
but there may be 2 pieces, both Plymouth and the counties.
Maybe
So,
we could.
but anyway, Steve Tebow's the contact.
And he's with the Cape
He's
Cod
the
Commission?
he's the assistant administrator for Barnstable County. So he works for Jack.
Good job.
Yeah.
So we can follow up on that. I'm not gonna be taking any notes because of
I'm
the
being
condition of my
secretary
hands.
again. No, I'm being secretary.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Dan what happened to the passenger side of his BMW. It looks like it picked up a little too big of it.
Yeah, my partner did that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Blame it on it. Okay, well, that's good.
Shall we first, as we get started for our new committee, shall we elect officers?
Yes.
So we could use a nomination for chair?
Skip in it.
Don't shake my hand, bro.
I've been held a lot
Okay.
worse than that.
All right then, I'm my kind of guy. Okay,
Anybody want to nominate somebody for chair?
Anyone want to, I would think, I can't nominate, but I would think Dennis would make an excellent chair.
I'll nominate Dennis,
Yeah.
only if he's willing to do it.
You're Dennis?
I am Dennis.
Can you make it to meetings
Yes, I usually do pretty well.
on time or just pretty
No,
well?
usually I'm on
Oh, let
time.
me
My
just-
worst
so
nightmare
is
is
there a
I'll
sti-
miss one
is
because
there a
I
second?
forgot. Today was a bit of a, me getting caught up in something that was,
I'm usually the one who's late.
yeah.
Skip, are you willing to second that nomination?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any other nominations?
Well, how about
All in
how big is
favor?
our committee?
Well, so far it's Kurt, he
hasn't
hasn't been
been
appointed,
appointed
but he
yet.
is on it, he's handed in his papers.
It'll be 5
So
people.
it's you and this
I
other,
happen to think that's a good sized group.
yeah.
Why don't we just get somebody going today till everybody gets here?
So, can I have a vote? All those in
Fine.
favor of Dennis as chair?
All right.
You vote for yourself?
Yes,
If I
you
have
should,
to, I
you
will, but
should.
generally I feel a
Okay.
little bit odd.
Well, if you
doing
can't
that.
have confidence in yourself, who else is gonna?
Confidence isn't a problem. My most important attribute is I'm not afraid to humiliate myself, which may show up shortly.
The meeting is all yours.
Okay, well, a quick overview of what I see is tasks. At some point, we were gonna put them together. That all changed with the $5 million that we are going to receive, we hope. I did follow along the letters of thanks to everyone involved. I think that's a great idea.
So let,
One quick thing that is important at this point would be to, and I can take that on as chair, I will get on the horn. Jay Ash is no longer in the position. I was thinking about maybe going directly to Charlie Baker. And I will request that meeting as chair, and anyone on that committee, on this committee that wants to go, it would be good company. I have not forgotten the fact that Mr. Baker would not sign a letter of support for our intention of doing the work in the harbor. And I would like to address that quickly, not in a bad way, but just let him know that I think he's a little overdue on support of the project. In order to get it kicked off, we have to start working on the state now, which should be a little better ride for us than the federal end of it, I think. That has to happen quickly. I've done a little bit more work on the equipment needs for the maintenance that we are going to have according to the state. Are you aware that the state had indicated to us over the past 3 to 4 years that they weren't going to be so quick to accommodate us in a crisis management situation, which they have identified our very request as? They would rather see preventive maintenance, some kind of maintenance, over the course of, say, the 10 to 15 years. They have come out and told us point blank that has to happen. So until the $5 million became available, we were pretty much working on the assumption we could very well have to start this whole project by the town's funds and move ahead. It came down to the question of, do we want to do it ourselves, or do we just want to let it silt in and suffer the consequences? And that end of the equation evaporates quickly. People making a living with shellfish, not being able to get the money out of the ramps that we should be. The other thing we were going to do when we went to see Charlie Baker, or when we do, is to say we are entering into a program of maintenance, and we would like him to lift the requirement of a ceiling on ramp fees, which I believe we have now because they funded
Part of it.
the improvement of the.
Part of it.
And if we were going to take on more to relieve the state's responsibility, I think they should at least give a thought to removing that ceiling to allow us to try to recoup some of the money, seeing they can't do it. I think they can, but they've said.
But that also shows an effort on our part
Yes,
to
it
work
does.
to trying to put
Yes, it
money on the
does.
table.
And along those lines, I don't know if you extended it, but The letter that you found about a month and a half ago
About the volumes.
was absolutely perfect for what we needed to do. And what I did was I took the price of dredging back at that point, and it was right around 15 million bucks. With simple math, you take the amount of cubic yardage that had already been figured by the Army Corps, and you divide that into 15 million, and you end up with a cost per cubic yard, which is really what we are going to need to move forward, taking care of a preventive maintenance thing and everything else. That ended up to turn into, and I'm doing this by memory, I believe it was $57 a cubic yard after I allowed for a 2% per annum increase on the cost per yard, only because prices go up. And we were looking at how many years between when they established 15 million and now it is, it gotta be 10 years, 5 years. So, do you think 2%, that would be my question to the committee, that a 2% increase on a cubic yard of removal is in order? If anything, I think it's a little low,
Yeah, 3, 4.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
Yeah, probably.
So, let's just say it's 4. Our cost for removal would have initially been right around, I think it was 54. I added on, got it to 57. And if we were to add on another 2% on top, would give us 4, which would bring us up to, I believe, $62, $63 a cubic yard. That would be the cost. The other thing that's very important for us to understand today, and a measurement that I don't think would be much better today than it was 5 years ago, was the annual rate of additional cubic yardage. And I believe in the federal section, which is basically the channel, right? Just going in, and where did that end? Somewhere down near the end of the marina?
The anchor is,
So it would end at the anchorage, which doesn't get us very far down the marina.
But
That would be the-
to interrupt you, that's why we discussed doing something to get to the launching ramp.
Gotcha. I gotcha, that would make sense. Probably, it would make sense, well, they're not gonna go down any
Yeah,
further
it's
than that
just
anyway, so we couldn't say, we'll give you a little of this to get us to there. We can't do that. But at any rate, we should be looking at roughly $62, $63 a cubic yard. And I do believe we've picked up, and I think we've picked up close to another 35 to 40,000 yards over that 5 years. So if you add that on, you'll find that our dredging, probably for the whole project now, is going to be in excess of 21 to 22 million.
How much additional would you say, do you have an estimate of how much additional sediment accumulates each year?
no.
It's in your
Just
letter.
right, yeah.
It's in the letter. And they broke it down to each part of each contract. They have a figure, it's in there. That was the one that we were trying to establish at our last meeting.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it without spending any more money, because I felt I'd read it before, and I had, but it was a while ago.
So
In
the
that letter-
additional sedimentation was included in that letter? Is that
No,
just the additional cost?
it wasn't the cost, it was just a cubic yard amount per annum
Okay.
for
that's what I
each
wanted.
section, which, if it was 5 years ago, you take those numbers and multiply them by 5, it should give us a pretty good idea of the actual yardage. It's gonna be as close as you could expect an engineering firm to come to now. They're gonna use the same estimate now as they did then, and you're not gonna hit it accurately. And they, yes,
It says the average estimated siltation rate is 5,000 cubic yards a year.
for the entire project or each
Area
phase?
2 for the south anchorage.
That is just for area 2.
And then,
I thought they had-
area 1 is 7,000 cubic yards.
So we're up to 12,000. And isn't there one more in there?
7,000.
No, those are the 2 state areas.
Okay, so we've got 12,000 cubic yards a year, times 5.
Plus another 2 years till we'll get to that area.
Add it on, because those are real
2021.
numbers.
Yeah,
And what we really want to end up at is an estimate for dredging in 2 years.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And that will get us as close as I think an engineering firm would have gotten us, without going back to resurvey the entire thing.
So this is getting ahead, but what would maintenance dredging include? Because this is what we are gonna have to write up. I mean, do you do a little bit every year? Do you do it every 2 years, 3 years?
You're gonna have to work within the windows that we are allowed
Right.
now.
That's true.
You are gonna have to re-permit annually for the right to use the disposal area in Massachusetts Bay. And I believe we came up with the idea that our permits would hold for 10 years from when they were first issued. So if 5 have gone by, we now have 5 years of permitting that is good, that we don't have to re-permit, with the exception of the disposal, dumping the barges. That doesn't carry over, that has to be renewed
we do it
annually.
every year.
And do we have to dump, once we get dredged, would we have to dump the maintenance dredging out in the bay where it's designated every
Yes.
time? So don't we
Anything,
need a scow for that though all the
well,
time? or-
this is,
Okay.
I said I had some additional
All right.
information for you.
Alright, so I'm just trying to get from my notes,
Yeah,
maintenance, we have to do it within the window, we'd have to do it. how
as
many
of
years?
right now, we have to do it by the
Yeah.
window. I don't know how we could, or
Yeah.
if we could. We would try to change that.
And we
I
would do a
think
little
those
bit
are
every
pretty
year.
firm, the time of year restrictions, there's really
With the
nothing. you can do about
turtles.
that.
Exactly.
Turtles
The environmental
and,
issues of
Migration,
Shellfish,
the
yeah.
dolphins and
Right.
the turtles.
horseshoe
Which-
crab.
Brings me, it's a good segue to what, my new information. I've looked all over the East Coast for used dump scows. If you can find them, they're not for sale. The people will lease them, and if they hear that there's a big dredging project going on the East Coast, they won't rent them, only because it retards their ability to get the job. That's why Cashman never did anything for us through his Sterling Equipment Company,
Interesting.
because he was feeling he'd be reducing the chances for him to make money. So, after talking to someone in New York City, I can't remember the name of the company exactly, they put it in my ear that we would have a difficult time hiring the barges, renting the barges, without just letting the whole job out. So that's nothing to be scared of. I called a company in Louisiana that builds those barges, and for $2 million apiece, you get a brand new barge that holds 2,500 cubic yards, needs 13 feet of water underneath it to haul it out loaded, full. It's a 13-foot draft. They're huge. The reason they have to be big, and you don't want to cut back on it, is because we're restricted by a time window, which means it's wise for us to hit it with the heaviest hammer you have. If you buy small equipment that can't, produce X amount, you're gonna start going backwards. So I just went with the 2,500 yard barge, and I figured 2 of them. We would spend $4 million for 2. And the upside of that is no one else on the East Coast is willing to rent them. We'd have an easy
But
time
we would.
renting them,
Yeah.
and probably we could eliminate the need of where we're gonna keep these monsters in the winter. So you'd make them available for a southerly job that isn't dealing with any ice. And if no one rents them, you should be able to get a pretty good buck for them. So at any rate, that's all speculation, but I think it's viable. It's a
Oh, we can
viable.
flip them over and make affordable housing.
Yes, that too. We could do that.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
At one point in your research, I remember you saying that everybody, if you tried to hire somebody right now, they're booked like 3 years out.
3 years, and that's exactly right.
So we're in 2019 right now. That would mean when we're ready to go in 2021, that's less than 3 years from now. Are we even gonna be able to get somebody?
Highly unlikely, according to everyone that I talked to. I talked to Cashman after the cat was out of the bag, that he wouldn't be selling or helping us in our quest for equipment. And that's when his, I don't know what he titles the next guy in line, let's just call him the vice president of the company, told me that they were booked for 2.5 years. And the guy from New York said, everybody's so busy right now, you'd have trouble renting one even if you could.
So do we need to ask for money at this town meeting because we need to book somebody for our 3 years from now or 2.5 years from now? I mean,
Well, it's for maintenance dredging though.
Well, you know, it's a bit of a gamble. Of course, if
Yeah.
it was on the warrant, it would have to be a borrowing,
Yeah.
which gives you a little bit of protection. I mean, it means you don't spend it unless you have the need,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't be caught without it if the situation came up. And at some point, the town's gonna have to get an earful of everything that we've been talking about for the past, I don't know how many years, long time. But it's important to get the word out. And great news with the $5 million, but we can't take our eye off the big picture, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the state is gonna
And
want us
that's
to
in
do all
that
this.
story you're saying that has to get out to the townspeople. That says, just
Yeah.
because we have anticipation of 5 million,
That's right.
these are the stepping stones and the timing, so that they
That's
see
right.
it as a total package, not, oh, you didn't tell us about this, you didn't tell us about that.
So excuse me, but I just presumed you'd done, and I can be you know,
I'll kick you under the table.
yeah, you gotta say, hey, give me a chance to talk. I can easily find, yeah, I'm no Robert, well, I am, 2 roads diverged upon the wood, here I go again. So, every time. It looks like $5 million, less the cost of employment to run the machinery, which is what we had as a rough idea anyways.
Yeah.
You'd spend $4 million on 2 scows, you need 2, to get one out on a high tide and have another one there to load for the next cycle of water. So we should have 2 barges, and I know we can set up with either a lattice crane or a rather huge excavator for $1 million with the operating platform. $5 million, less any maintenance and less any operation.
But this is one scenario versus if you
Hiring
could
it
find
out.
somebody you could hire out because they'd have all the equipment, the expertise, how to maintain them, where to find the help, where to find help if somebody leaves, that type of thing. So you gotta go both forks.
Yes, that's right. And you have to be well educated on both sides of it. And there's no room for fantasy, it just comes down to the numbers.
Do we know if the county actually has any scows?
They don't.
Would it make sense for them to consider it?
It
Well, isn't
may,
that gonna be part of what Dan brought forward today with the county
Mill,
getting
yeah.
a new dredge?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything except dredge. I didn't hear specific equipment other than the
Well,
barge
it sounded
itself.
to me like it would be like a clamshell and
Yeah.
a scow.
And a scow.
And just to, on the same note, we did meet with the consultant about the feasibility of having the town do the dredge ourselves. They didn't seem to think it would be too feasible. But if we
Did they
want
give
them
you
to
any
go
reason?
forward with finding out the numbers and everything, it'd cost us $9,500
For what?
Which consultant?
to do the feasibility study for doing the dredging ourselves. So when I saw that, I figured, well, they were so adamant about it being a bad idea for the town to get into the dredging business and right off the bat have a job for 400,000 cubic yards.
So Mike, who is the consultant?
It's GEI
That's GEI,
Consultants, it
okay,
used to
yeah.
be Bourne
Bourne,
Consulting
okay.
Engineers.
So it's still Bourne,
No,
We
it's
call it Bourne.
GEI.
same people?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, GEI is a pretty big company, and Bourne was kind of small, and they merged.
Well, the other problem I have with the county is right now, they're months behind on the contracts they've already started on, because one of them hasn't run. Provincetown, they did 2 months late. I'm not opposed to the county, but if we're gonna get thrown into that, to somebody else who we get into a cycle, if they're that far behind, does that mean we're gonna lose our window? I mean, some places have much larger windows than we do. I'm not saying, but to take into consideration that each town, because it's not run totally as a business where they're on time, and I mean, businesses fail too, don't get me wrong. But I mean, the county is more, when we get done with you, we go to the next one. And sometimes they slide projects in because you know, you work your way around the Cape and back, I understand that. But my understanding is Provincetown waited a minimum of 60 days past when they were supposed to be there. We can't, and it could happen with anybody, but take into consideration that if you're gonna use the county, to make sure that they are online. And I don't know why, I think they had some problems with the equipment, but I do know that we have to be very cautious of that.
Are there other communities on the Cape in Barnstable County that have the same issue with the sediment that we do?
Yes.
Yes,
Many, or?
most.
Orleans does. don't
Yeah,
they?
Yeah.
most of them do.
Sassuat.
Sassuat is mud too, they have to take it offshore and use a mechanical dredge. Barnstable
Barnstable, yeah.
is another.
So there is a need for it, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is that there's a need for it, and then where do we fall on the line? And if they finish one project in late November, that only gives them a short number of days to do anything here, so.
And is the equipment that they're gonna be buying big enough to keep up with 400,000 yard jobs?
And Eastham is starting up a committee too, to do their dredging there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but aren't we seeing this as maintenance? not-
Yeah,
not
that's
for
the way I would be looking
You know,
at
so
it
you're looking
too,
at
is
the-
maintenance.
You know, I think
because-
it's sort of second tier,
Sec- yeah.
second problem here. and that
Probably
is-
more maintenance than anything else, because you aren't gonna start right off with moving 4,000 yards, the window won't allow it. For us to get
Yeah.
what was 400,000 yards, and is in all likelihood more than that now, it's
So-
gonna have to be 3 different cycles because of the window.
Are
Yeah,
you
I don't
saying
think-
then that what we'd be looking at is contracting with somebody in 2021 and 2022, and then we'd use the county dredge past that for maintenance dredging? Is that what I'm hearing then?
Yeah, like
I
10
would-
years down the line when they're saying that this new dredge may come online.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
2025.
So it would kind of work nicely, because we should have a maintenance dredge cycle every 10 years.
Okay.
Or more
Well,
often.
every 10 years, every 10 to 15, we've been removing 400, aren't we?
Well, that was only for the state channels. We've dredged them twice, but the rest of the marina or the harbor hasn't been dredged, so.
When was the last time we went around the inner
In 2002.
2002.
But the mooring basin was done once, and that was
Yeah, I
in
haven't seen that.
57.
It's been a
So,
long time.
and the other issue that the consultant spoke to us about was the possibility that when it does come time for the state job, we could hire a dredge company that could come in with 3 scows, 4 scows, 3 dredge plants, and try to do the whole thing in one season, which would be conceivable. It may cost a little bit more, like the estimate was $1 million more than it would over 2 seasons, but that would be made up in just mob and demob.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Made up in what?
Mobilization and demobilization of the
Okay.
equipment. It costs almost $1 million to
Yeah,
bring the equipment here and then to bring it back.
yeah.
So that is one thing we could look into too.
Mhm.
If we could get the federal job done, in the next year or 2, get the rest of it done, I think a 10-year dredge, you know, we'd be lucky to find areas that would probably need maintenance dredge. Because that's one of the issues for maintenance dredging. You have to show the need.
Yeah.
So that if we go out, if they go out there and do a survey and they see there's 6 feet of mean low water, then, well, you don't
Just-
need it, right?
So I can be a little bit more versed on what we're talking about. We were dredged last in
2002.
2002. And how long did we have after 2002 before we became,
Yeah, I would say it was about 10 years before you really started noticing at low tide that, you know, there was money
2010,
out.
2011.
In the last 3 years, it's really
Yeah,
grown in.
yeah.
So you wouldn't have done it before the 10-year period then?
Well, the way it sloughed in, it would have been nice to get it done, you know, so that we did have a navigable channel
Yeah.
throughout the tide. But if we get the mega dredge done, it's gonna take twice as long for that sediment to, you know,
Okay.
start filling in again.
But wouldn't we be better off starting on a quicker cycle, so we're only dredging the edges of it, instead of dredging all of it? I mean, that's,
You know,
Yeah.
I agree with you, Alfred. I think one of the things that concerns me about the maintenance dredging aspect of this, not the original one, but I think there's a lot of, smarter ways to think about how we do that going forward. One of them is to, start to work on preventing resiltation. We have a certain amount of siltation that's going on because of the lack of anchoring of the shoreline. And to the extent that we, one thing that's done elsewhere, which I've raised a number of times, is increasing the amount of shellfish we have in that area. To the extent that you get more filtration, you get less siltation. You also anchor the material, so you're getting less refilling. With the other projects that we're contemplating as part of the wastewater project, to the extent that we do, that we have a good result in Mayo Creek, that's also a big source of siltation. So there are a number of things that I think we can do in the maintenance dredge aspect of this, not only to save money, but to either do the maintenance more often, couple it with these other things that, by the way, we can get grant funding for, to pay for other things that are gonna help prevent the problem in the future. So I think there's an awful lot of stuff that we can think about there.
what we have to do is think of a plan that we can address when we go see the state. We have to come up with some sort of a plan, so we can get the state on board.
Well, that's why,
That's what, and
The
I
green
agree
things-
with
The
you.
green things are gonna get their attention. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it will. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have enough answers for that to satisfy the state.
and I am in contact with Bond Consulting, like I said, and they're ready to go forward with a dredging maintenance plan for us that would, point out all of these issues and make it, something we could hand to the state, here's a maintenance plan.
Did they give you any idea how much that would cost?
Yeah, I think they did.
The study or maintenance dredging?
The study.
oh, so I'm not so sure it matters what it is, because the state is basically, correct me if I'm wrong, told us we need a maintenance program.
Yeah,
That's what they
Yeah.
said.
Or they're not gonna fund us.
right.
So for us to ask for money without,
Having a
Plan for that.
tips
yeah,
and something
bad,
that
and
looks
different,
like it's well thought out of. I couldn't think of a better situation to go to the state with an article that had been passed in town meeting floor, even if it's a borrowing
Yeah.
article.
Well, and plus you know that we have been setting aside, we voted on that last year, right, to set aside 10,000 a year for maintenance dredging, but hopefully it would increase by a lot. But again, I don't know how much this this short-term rental tax, but I've thought of that, Dan's thought of it, of using, deeming a lot of money for dredging and for maintenance
Well,
dredging,
here's something just
like 30%
quickly
or
to think
something.
about, is we came up with, I believe it was 12,000 yards a year,
Right.
Yeah.
12,000 yards a year, and I know right now you can safely assume that at $60 a cubic yard. So if you multiply 12,000 times 60, it'll give you a rough idea how close to we get to $10,000.
Well,
10,000.
10,000 is minimal.
Oh, there's what you
Yeah,
got.
Yeah,
720,000.
So,
Yeah.
right off the bat,
yeah.
we
No, every
know
year.
that we're looking
For the
at
year.
$720,000 annually,
That's the yearly, because it's 12,000 a year
annually.
of siltation.
And the
Okay,
state
so
is
every
gonna
year.
wanna
Yeah,
see
every
how
year.
we address that.
Well, that's why my concern, you know, in front of the creek, there's a couple places it fills in very quickly.
Yeah,
And I think it'd be cheaper to dredge a small area with the most yardage coming out of it versus waiting for it to fill in and having to do all of it. But I mean, that's probably what a study would show, because there's some places in the back of the mooring, I mean, it's soup, it comes out of the creek. So I mean, if we can only dig, you know, one section, two sections for a short period of time to keep it from encroaching, you know, it's kind of like the snow, it just keeps coming out of the street. If you can dig a hole, it goes back. I mean, that's what you're doing with this. So I mean, I don't know what one can do for that. But my concern from the beginning with this was a maintenance plan for the state funding level.
yeah. So what we've gotta do is somehow turn all of the good ideas into something that we can have, I would say at the earliest, a few weeks after town meeting, to go to the state. I'd love to see, do we still have time to put something in the warrant?
It closes a week from Thursday, so.
Well, to think in those terms, we really should come up with something realistic, something that has a number, and something that has been voted on and passed at town meeting. And if we were artful enough, it could allow for a change of direction, as long as the state knew we could take care of it under the old tried and true method, which makes all the big contractors and engineering firms in the Commonwealth wealthy. That's how they do it. The bigger job they have, the more money they make.
So what would it take for town meeting, like what money between the two?
I would
Between Dan
say,
and Dan?
I would be very honest and get up and say exactly this, and I'd be glad to move it if
How
you're
much-
looking for
how
someone
much
that's
money?
gonna take the bullets.
Like, what do you think we should set it up?
5 million,
For maintenance dredging?
yes.
I mean, does that not include the state
Because you can't be honest and say,
money?
beg your pardon?
Does that include the state matching money that we're trying to,
That isn't
No,
included
it
in
doesn't.
that. The matching
Yeah.
number A is still a little bit in the dark. Last I heard, we may have been able to get 50% of the cost.
Yeah,
But it was only a year ago when Jay Ash was saying 20 to 25%. So I think 50 we could use as a bit of a thing, but that doesn't have anything to do, the state's not to the point where they're gonna help us with the maintenance dredging.
right, but if we have to go in front of town meeting and ask for the matching funds for the 50%, the state gives us 50% for phase 2
Yes,
and
yes.
3, we have to ask for that money, and
Yes.
then money for maintenance.
Well, we won't
So
be
that's what I wanna
asked,
clarify
I wanna
too.
ask the money for the maintenance this town meeting.
Because we know that it's gonna be a year later anyway.
And it's
So
also
you can
putting
ask
money
for
on the
state-
table for
right.
Charlie up there in Boston to
Exactly.
decide, oh, they put their money where their mouth is and they're,
But I'd like to
You
keep the design of it, so it stays, we have room in the margins of that to maybe experiment with different types. I'd like to see it as a borrowing article that isn't guaranteed an expense unless we need it.
okay, so hold this up, because I'm taking the notes.
Okay.
5 million for,
5 million,
wait, I gotta go through my brain.
yes,
5 million. 5 million for the 50% of, it's not maintenance dredging, it's dredging of the inner harbor to match the state.
No,
no.
So I brought that up,
No.
it's
Yeah.
backwards.
Let me back, and I tend to talk like
So,
a
so to
machine
me,
gun, so.
there's them coming in and dredging, which we know we have to spend 50% of whatever it costs. But then there's the annual, and I like Alfred's idea of an annual budget of
That's my
maintenance.
opinion as well,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna disregard anything Mike
Well, I
says.
think you wouldn't mind the,
The one thing that I
Probably
do
get dragged
question,
along
and
with
I
every
do
year.
it with every engineering and insurance company, I put my insurance out to bid annually, as opposed to just jumping on board with one company and continue and continue and continue. I think it's good to break it up. I also have been working with engineering firms long enough to know, they're gonna wanna do the thing that makes them the most money. And if they were the ones that wanted to put it out to bid as part of the project, and we weren't involved in it, you can get into the same type of things that happen with the water system. In a design build, it's called, and it's a tough nut to crack. It's an advanced way of gaining a little control over what you're gonna spend on something, but we won't get into it now.
not yet. So
And just
5
a-
million, wait, 5 million for dredging the inner harbor.
4 million for 2 barges and a crane or an excavator platform.
That's
For
getting
what?
us into the
For
business
what?
of doing
Well,
dredging.
yeah.
I don't know.
we have
Maintenance
talked about
dredging
that.
is in the business of dredging, it's just a
You don't
different amount of.
subcontract it.
Well, the problem is, A,
Oh, you talked about how we can't find somebody that's willing to do it.
that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem, which has to be addressed, and it's easy to say not this time, is Wellfleet doesn't have the money to keep coming up with multi-million-dollar projects all the time. We don't have the money. There's a fiscal side of this that has to be addressed. And it does, and I can understand why it would sound like a scary proposition to invest $5 million into a couple barges and something that digs. But I do that work all the time. I do big volume
Yeah.
excavation all the time, and I know what it really is. It's a big number thing, there's a ton of overhead, and unless you've done it for a while, it could be a bit scary. That $5 million is gonna be what it takes the state to say you're serious.
I'm still not clear on what I asked.
Can I, so
Yes.
phase 1 is the federal government coming in and dredging the federal channel.
Yes,
Phases 2 and 3 are the second and third year where the state is gonna come and help us.
and
So,
help us to
are you
maybe
saying-
50%.
Are you saying, what do you think we need to ask for phase 2 and 3? A matching
Individually.
grant with, you know, something that's gonna match whatever the state will put forward.
For me to think about that, I need more than the next 30 seconds. I've been
Okay.
taking this in kind of a.
So we don't have that number yet,
Well,
but
that-
then,
that
once
number-
that's done,
that
then
number-
we would look at the 5 million that we would need for maintenance
And
dredging.
just let me add this.
Yep,
We are going to need to set up with some sort of a maintenance program, or we're not gonna get
Well,
any
yeah,
help
that's
from
what
the
we're
state.
talking
Yep.
about, yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
And you have to do that when you talk to Charlie, or he's gonna say,
We've gotta have something when we talk to Charlie that shows we're serious and we mean business. And, I think the most effective way to do that is to relate to what he knows, which is a big machine. He looks out of his
Who's he?
office in the state,
Oh.
and he sees these big clamshells digging out Boston Harbor endlessly. And the $5 million that I'm talking about is the amount of money that it would take to have the impact that Jay Cashman would. And it would also offset the 50% that we have to come up with if the state gives us 50.
Right, so that's what I wanted, yeah.
So what that would cut down on the amount of money the town has to spend on dredging. What you do is you buy the equipment and you act like a contractor, you act like a big contractor. They buy it, they don't sub it out, they do it themselves. It's because subbing it out keeps you in the chain of constantly coming up with big numbers that you're gonna need. And the yardage that we just figured quickly, and I'd say we're within plus or minus in the extreme 20%, that's big stuff. That's $750,000 a year just for the maintenance dredging. You would pay for $5 million in 6.5 years. You'd have your overhead as far as the equipment goes for you. And remember, I said I didn't address the help. the people to run it, or the cost of maintenance. It didn't address that, but at this particular time, what we need to do is be able to go to Boston, set up a meeting with Charlie Baker, show him an approved article from the town that would cover the cost of maintenance dredging for us. And it's under a borrowing authorization, so once that's made clear, and we're completely honest, I don't think it would be a problem to get that passed.
So we also need to ask at town meeting for 5 million.
Yes, more than that.
Well, we're just gonna start,
50%
we're just gonna start. at 5
contribution
million.
It's 7.5.
state.
It's 7.5 right now. It's half.
It's
half of
7.5 now,
15.
yeah.
There you go.
15 is the state
But wait, okay,
local
all right.
contribution, so half of it's 7.5.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
And
Okay. Okay, I got it.
what's gonna have to
I got
come
it.
first, before we,
Let her do it through her head so she understands,
Yeah,
because
no,
she's
now
gonna
I
try to
finally-
flip the switch
yeah,
in
we
the
finally,
in
I
the
got you
meeting.
to the end of it and we came back and I got it, yeah.
okay,
I have one question, not to be the negative one, but I'm gonna be.
go for it.
In the past, town meetings not always approved dredging the first go-around.
Mm-hmm,
So if we ask for $5 million, any amount,
mm-hmm.
and we get turned down, we're going nowhere.
Well,
Then
then,
what
yeah.
I would get
We're
up
not
and
gonna
say,
get turned down.
pull the shade on Wellfleet Harbor, folks. It's
So
all-
I don't
We're
disagree
not
with you,
gonna
Dennis,
get
but I'm
turned
looking
down.
at it from the,
And you're right, you're putting a lot at stake, but you know, the answer here in my eyes, Alfred, is there's no alternative.
I don't disagree with you, Dennis, it's the fact that
Yeah, and I get
I'm
up and
just
say,
looking
look,
at
it'd be
in
a
the
hell,
past.
yeah,
In
it'd
the
be a
past-
hell of a lot easier to just
Yeah.
sit and say, let it fill in.
I mean, everyone in town
I'm
knows
just-
we need dredging and
Okay,
it's, so,
I
and it's a
agree
lot
with
of
you,
money,
But I
but.
didn't think it's gonna cost 5 million.
It's gonna
Um,
cost
Or
more than
just,
that.
piece of
The
it.
people in the know.
If they've
it's
been
gonna
paying
be
attention,
expensive.
they-
Yeah,
they know
do
that we've been
Well, what we're
talking
gonna
about
do
that.
is start out with a dredging project that is going to be in excess of 20 million,
Yeah,
easily.
the whole thing, the entire thing. yeah.
That's right. And we're gonna tell them the state is not gonna give us any money if we don't have a bona
We have
fide
to have a
maintenance
plan.
program.
Yeah,
And if we did set up, so we could do the work within the windows that we're gonna be allowed, we're gonna need that size equipment. We get the equipment first, we won't be approaching this town meeting with the request for matching funds to the state. Can't do it, not this year. Next year we would go. And hopefully we'd be able to go before town meeting next year and say, we have the equipment, we no longer don't have to pay an additional 7.5 million for the state work, and this is just over the period of 1 year. We reduce the overhead to the town of Wellfleet by a ton, by a whole lot.
I know.
And a lot of this has to be viewed from an economic sense, because, you know,
And it has to be, yeah.
we run in trouble annually. We're built to run behind the 8 ball every year. And how about the unfunded debt? I think that's a little more than the cost of a dredge. And we
Yeah,
don't have any way to, other than add to the tax rate and pay it off.
I do think the easiest way to pitch it though, Dennis, is, I don't know that we have this, we know that we need to match the federal government and the state government with respect to
Yes.
this project.
Just to say.
no, we don't have
Just-
to match
just
the
the
federal.
I'm
state.
sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
Just
have to
the
match
state.
the state government.
Yep,
And to ask for 5 million as a down payment on this project is not unreasonable.
right. I don't think so either.
And constructing in that manner is a down payment on the project.
It's a down
as a
payment on the
whole.
project. You know, we don't know
yeah.
ultimately what it's actually gonna cost, but we have to have, a
But we
commitment
do
from the
have
town.
5
We have to have a
million ready.
commitment from the town to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to go forward with a maintenance plan to get the state money.
And then to
Yes.
let the public know that there is in all likelihood
Gonna be
$1
more.
million, how we presented $1 million a year, up to $1 million a year maintenance, and then that excess will go also towards the 5 million that
We're
might have been
borrowing.
overage, yeah. So,
But then are they gonna
Yeah, well,
ask though for a
right.
scope of the total plan? Is somebody going, okay, you
Well,
got
if they
this as a
do,
down payment,
we'll have
what's
it.
the rest of the
Yeah.
payments
Yeah.
out? So you
Yeah.
have to be ready to answer.
I don't like tying it as a down payment, because when you make a down payment, there's no equity gained.
Yeah, no, I get that nuance, but, I mean,
Well, it's very true.
in a political,
nuance.
yeah, in finance terms, but as as a political matter, it's,
Oh.
as a political matter, we're gonna have to come up with more than 5 million. This is only the first, this is the first request.
This is so we can get money from the state.
This is so we can get money from the state.
Yeah. So is 5 million enough to ask for the state, Dan? Or should we
I
ask
think it
for
shows,
up
I
to
think it
6
shows a
million?
commitment.
Yes. Do you think
From
we
the
should ask for
town.
5 or up to 6?
Five.
5, okay, 5's a nice even round number, okay.
And you can saddle the horse any way you'd like. I
Yeah.
just wanna make sure it passes. And, to me, I'd rather have it done as honest as possible.
So you would say this town meeting,
Yeah,
we ask for 5 million for our 50% of the state request.
no,
No.
No, in order,
To create,
For
to
maintenance
to
dredging.
create a maintenance dredging program.
Well, what about the 5 million that we're gonna have to pay the state?
we don't need that
That's-
until next time.
Yeah, and then it's gonna be
That's 12 months
See,
away.
I
That's over.
think the other way where, all right,
Well,
okay, all right.
I
got it,
understand that,
Got
but
it.
the
This-
reality of.
So you wanna ask for
is this.
maintenance before we've even gotten it done, but that's okay, I
Well,
get it.
without
Well,
it,
we
you're
won't
not
get it
trying
done
to.
unless we
True.
have the
You gotta
ability
show
to
Show the
commitment.
commitment,
do the
okay,
maintenance.
all right.
You'll find out
I
too,
got
if you got the backing in,
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that
we
they're willing
do,
to
yeah.
throw up multi-million dollars.
these are the hurdles we have to,
I mean,
Close
I'm
before we
getting
see Mr.
emails from
Baker.
friends from out of town saying, so happy you got dredging money, you know, I mean, everybody wants dredging, everyone.
yeah.
Um,
The
And
state,
knows we know we need
I
it.
mean, the state told us last time that they weren't coming back unless we had a plan.
Right, no, I know, okay, so I'm thinking we're gonna ask for both this town meeting, I go for the whole thing.
well, we only need the
But-
maintenance right now.
Okay.
The following town meeting, we might be looking at, 3.25 that town meeting and 3.25 the following one. Because those
That
are,
makes sense, Dan's.
that's a
brain's
2-year
working.
program, so you may only have to come up with your yearly portion
Okay.
unless, Mike's calculations are right, and then you say, well, we're not gonna do it over 2 years, we're gonna do it over 1.
So what I'm thinking here is if we ask for maintenance dredging, maybe we should just ask for dredging fund and explain to them what the options are. Because if we're asking for money to do phase 2 and 3 in conjunction with the state, and we're not asking for that until 2020, I'm just thinking of that 3-year, if we can't hire somebody until 2023, we're kind of screwed.
Yes,
So,
So we should get the money before.
well, I'm just thinking that even though we're looking at this for maintenance dredging, the 5 million, maybe we just make it generic enough and say it's 5 million towards dredging, can be used as a match for the state, or can be used as a payment towards dredging, maintenance dredging. I wanna, if you find some
Yeah.
great equipment
Yeah.
that we wanna go out and purchase, that will really make sense, I wanna make sure that we can use some of this 5 million for that.
oh, I wanna know we could use all of it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same
I
way,
mean,
so,
this
Yeah.
isn't
But I see
fantasy.
what you're saying, you're parlaying these, they're hearing some money's going out for dredging, and some of it's gonna go, that we get that, it helps us equate with the state that this is what we've thrown in for the pot, and we need to show them that type of thing.
yeah.
Well, and even if we
Under
need
the
consulting
shell.
money in the meantime.
Well, like, Mike said, doing maintenance dredging maybe every 10 years or something. I don't want everybody to think that this 5 million is for 10 years down the road. It may be spent next year if you find a good deal on a barge and a dredge.
If you follow this, and I wouldn't be afraid to bring this to town meeting at least, if you follow the letter that Mike found a month and a half ago, you'll find that Wellfleet's gonna have to come up with close to $750,000 a year if you're going to do it in cycle dredging. That keeps it open. I'm not in favor of letting it go to the point where at low tide you
It has
say,
been, no.
it's time.
No.
I'm thinking about actually maybe even improving the situation. I'd love to see the thing 4 feet
Oh,
deeper,
yeah.
then you could have one of those ferries stop off in Wellfleet
Yeah.
and dump off 300 people every night.
Well,
And then you can get grant money when you
And
tie
more-
it
more
into
boats.
public
Commercial, yeah.
transportation.
Yeah, waterways.
Then you
yeah.
could get a different source of money from the
Federal-
state,
And the federal probably.
you
And
know?
that's something that Kevin Mooney had suggested years ago, having the water taxi that comes in
Yeah.
the Wellfleet Harbor.
He's-
Yeah.
Then it could say, hey, we have,
Yeah.
like transportation, and the state
Yeah.
would probably cover a lot more than 50% of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would. But these are the things that you can do if you realistically set things up. I look at a little bigger picture than just this year and 5 million. I'd like to get up in town meeting and say, well, give them a quick talk on what it's gonna cost us per year. And if you took that money and amortized it over 8 years, if they knew what the 5 million was, you know, I'd like them to know it's for equipment. So we can do this ourselves. And hopefully find other people, or other ways to do it. I wouldn't stop looking, but I'd love to have it on paper that it was for equipment to dredge. And explain it isn't dredging the entire harbor. This is because the state required us to come up with a dredging plan. And over the next week, as you said we have, before we can't get an article in place, I'm sure we can do some more work to make sure that it would be economically viable to do this. I'm just thinking it is right now,
Well,
only because of
No, I'm
experience
glad, I'm
I've
glad
had.
to hear, because that's, I wanted to meet back in February to get this going, but I knew we'd need money. You got that, Dan?
Yes, well, we have to insert a question into the ballot.
Yes.
That'll have to be done at our meeting on Thursday,
I never got notified. We are having it on Thursday
Yeah.
at 12 or 1,
Well,
or whatever, okay,
I'll look.
okay.
Helen talked to Courtney about it,
Good,
so I'll clear.
okay.
But I'll put it on the warrant to,
Yes,
or the agenda that we want to look at inserting that ballot question. So
okay,
that has to be done prior to next Tuesday's meeting.
yeah.
And then at Tuesday's meeting, we'll bring forward an article to ask for 5 million for dredging.
You're gonna get questions from the
I don't want to
townspeople as
confuse
to what
it.
the,
Am I getting a little out of hand here?
the impact is
I
gonna
just
be on their payment and their
I
taxes.
just think we
I
have, we
put
have.
that
on every
I
one
don't
of the
think
summary.
You're
we're tied to
amortizing the money
anything
over
specific.
5, period of years.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
I
not
think-
gonna be
I
one
think
hit
we
to
have to
one year.
make-
It's multiple
know,
years. that-
People want the harbor dredged.
Yeah,
I think it gets confusing when we start to talk about maintenance dredging versus dredging
So
versus
yeah.
oh,
equipment
but I don't
versus
think you can tie,
consultants
you can't lump
versus.
it together, they're two,
No, I get it. I'm just
entities.
saying in terms of like, how is the public gonna react to different things? I think, my concern would be that everybody supports dredging. And they wanna vote for an article.
yeah.
The issue in my mind would be getting something, that people may have concerns about the town getting into dredging. That's a real different question.
And I can understand why they would.
That's a real
Yeah.
different
Worry
question.
about that.
I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that requires, in my mind at least, a lot of thought and a lot of good, hard work in
And it
terms of
does,
presenting
and I
that
agree.
to explain at the town meeting.
Well, let's
My
be-
position right now, as duly elected chair of this meeting, is we've got to come up with some idea that Charlie Baker can say, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
good.
viable
Yeah,
program.
Yeah,
So my request would be for alternatives to what I presented. Something that he will say, looks to me like you're serious about it.
so
That's
my
what it's gonna
request
take.
would be asking for like $7 million, borrowing up to 7 million for the next whatever years, if we even have to put years in, that would then cover, let's say, again, I always have this great outlook on life that things are gonna run smoothly and on time. But
Might
if
as well
we,
have it that
if
way.
we need money for, to start the state before next town meeting, and I guess we could do 250 and 250 on the following years, but if we, we could even say up to 6 million, up to 7 million, rather than the 5 million, that we would then have enough leeway for everything, and then come back, and let them know that we will be coming back in another 2 years, or whatever we work out, whatever plan we work out. But do you think like asking for 7 million is ridiculous.
It's a borrowing authorization.
Yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't really
how
matter
do
what
you
the
guys feel
number is.
about putting it up to 7 million?
As long as they know that we could be buying equipment out of it.
Yeah,
What I don't wanna
Yeah.
do is send up an article in a cloud of smoke, and then when they start seeing the, let's say a couple big barges come into the harbor, and they say, well, when did we
Wait.
ever authorize this?
yeah.
I'd rather they
Camouflage them,
know.
make them as casinos.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, they're gonna be bigger.
7 million, 5 million, keep it easy?
What I wanna know is, does this mean I should go forward with having the engineers do a feasibility study for the town taking over the dredging?
I don't,
I think it's a dredge maintenance plan,
it is a plan, and,
not necessarily a feasibility study on the town.
yeah, I don't think, I
That's
don't,
gonna give
I
all
wouldn't
the
do it yet.
costs and everything
Yeah,
that
I
would be
wouldn't do it
needed.
yet. I think the most important thing that we should be focusing on right now is something that's gonna make Charlie Baker smile. Something that is gonna say, these people are ready to go.
Well,
I
and
couldn't
then,
think of anything more convincing than a approved warrant
Yeah.
article regarding,
so, and then that could then include, when you meet with him, and we have consultants in place, or maybe by then we'll have, we already have the consultant's report from a few years ago, but then we could get that in place, right? Or something.
At least with the money being approved, we can hire the consultants to,
Yeah.
I mean,
We're gonna,
that we're there, they can iron out what we have to work with,
Yeah.
and what we need to work with.
because we're gonna need the consultants any way we move, right?
yes.
I think a
So-
big thing is you've got to tell, you can tell the population of the town that the federal government has in their budget for next year, $5 million that they're willing to budget for the town of Wellfleet to dredge. But now we need to pony up
Next year.
the
yeah.
money to get this project rolling. We have to pony up some money. And so,
Yeah.
yes, 7.5 million is part of a borrowing effort over the years to get the task done.
Yeah,
Well, what would be the state's, 7.5 million, you said?
Yeah.
7.5 million for this round of dredging.
and it's borrowing, and it's not gonna be all spent at once. And it's gonna just have to be really well presented before town meeting
Yeah.
and at town meeting,
Mhm.
slideshow, because I still don't think people understand the whole federal channel, state
And
area
harbors, right,
and the
exactly.
harbor. They really don't. And I don't know, they should have seen, people who care have seen a presentation on it, but yeah, it'll just have to be really well presented and clear.
Take questions and have answers.
Yeah,
All you can do.
what do you think?
Could be a lot of borrowing articles on,
Well, we can turn the camera off. We can cut out a few. I mean, that's what I said, dredging is my priority. Dredging is my
Yeah, it should be
priority.
the.
It's a
biggest-
town's priority for a lot of
I
things.
think
The
so,
shellfishing and
yeah.
other
Everything's
uses that
gonna
have, for people
benefit.
that have boats and stuff that want
The
to
whole
operate
town,
out there
yeah,
and go out and fish
yeah,
without flipping over.
yeah.
No, we don't have anybody come to Strange's anymore either.
Come
I mean,
what?
We don't have anybody come to our harbor anymore.
I know.
No.
No, I mean, it's a huge economical factor, certainly at this point.
And if we
Has
think
been.
beyond what we have been thinking, it could be even bigger.
Yeah,
This thing
I
about
know, we
bringing
still
a
have to
boat
talk
in from
about that.
Boston
Oh, geez.
into, that's
yeah.
plenty of room for that.
So at one of our meetings up in Boston, I sat next to the chair of the select board from Quincy. And she was excited because Quincy used to bring a ferry up here probably in the early 1900s with workers. Would bring them into Wellfleet Harbor, and then from Wellfleet Harbor they'd go back to Quincy.
Mhm.
And I think it would be great if it became a commuter to the airport, because Quincy has the ferry to the airport, and
Mhm.
Boston traffic is a nightmare, and I know they're working on transportation, so if we said get us dredged, we have people going to the Quincy ferry up to the airport, there goes a lot of traffic out of Boston.
Yeah.
So that's another
Yeah, but
idea.
people are already doing that at a P-town, I don't know if we're gonna compete there.
We have a smaller, more intimate ferry.
Just farther to go.
We'll serve well-feed oysters on it.
Whatever we can do to
Yeah.
get another door
Champagne.
into state grants.
Okay, so this is enough for this meeting, right?
So I'm
Anybody-
gonna
okay.
write an article for 7.5 million.
Everybody likes that, or is it too much?
That's
What
the
the
right
hell?
number.
I don't have a problem with 7.5 million at all. We just, I do believe we have to be very open
Yeah,
about what that $7.5 million is going
Yes.
to entail. And,
And then we work our butts off to get a state match for that. So we've got 15 million for dredging.
yes,
And that would take care of us in the
Yeah.
first, and that 7.5 that we're asking for, may be for equipment, it may be hiring a contractor, whatever we
Consulting
can,
fees,
whatever
more
we can do to
environment,
hire to
Yeah.
get it done the most efficiently and
Yeah.
cost effective.
and
Yeah.
what we can say is we won't be getting any state funds if we
we
don't.
don't have.
Exactly.
it.
Have this
Yeah,
money.
that's very
This isn't a
important.
dream or something someone wants.
No, we've
This
been
is a
told.
necessity. We have to do it.
Okay.
And be honest, there's a chance we could end up buying equipment if it turns out it's more feasible.
Yeah.
If it turns out that it'll save us
And more
money.
time.
Or we can end up like this.
Well,
No,
and
that-
now-
that'll take care of it, yeah.
now it's starting to actually influence some shellfish beds.
Oh, yeah, that's
Incorrect,
really,
I don't know. I've heard that.
it's all seeping underground from all these homes.
Yeah,
It is definitely
is.
affecting shellfish beds.
yeah.
So this is,
And the quality of the product.
are we kind
Yeah.
of done with this? Because this is another subject that I just want clarification on.
Yeah.
Are the shellfish beds affecting dredging with kind of restricting the flow of water?
Well, no, actually,
No.
listening to Kurt,
The opposite.
They
They
really
help.
are cleaning it?
We
There's
had
none of
to-
the, there's
when
none
we
of the
were-
mayonnaise or mung getting
when-
on the racks?
So when we were monitoring originally, when we put the culch in at the pier for the oyster propagation project back in 2010, the first 3 years, we started to see a big decline in the muck levels
Really?
right
Okay.
around the area.
Mhm.
You know, it was very, very encouraging. And then, of course, we had some horrific winter storms that brought in muck from everywhere. And, that's what oversilted
Okay.
the area
So,
now. But we
okay, 'cause
definitely did
people are-
see,
Yeah.
But what is the muck made out of? Vegetation that dies.
yes.
Organic matter.
So it all-
Organic matter.
So we all grow it on our grant. I mean, my nuts are covered with seaweed, it's, the racks have it all.
Sounds
But what-
quite a
what the-
problem.
Yeah,
I'm
what-
just saying.
But what the oysters do is they filter the water column, which removes that stuff, and they process it so that it makes it bioavailable to microbes that then can have most of it go
Yeah.
out to the atmosphere.
I think
It all
what Janet
keeps
was
up.
referring to a little bit though, and I've
Is
heard
it-
people say this, if the racks are on a raised bed, is that slowing the flow of water in and out of the harbor?
It, the oysters are feeding on that. So
How
is
fast
it
do
slowing?
they-
Anything you put in the water, whether it's an anchor, whether it's a rack, anything's gonna change the flow around the rack. Does it slow the water? It actually speeds up around the rack, because the same amount of water has to go around the rack. It has to
Alright,
travel a
yeah.
further distance to get to where it's ultimately going on the tide. So, but I'm not sure what the genesis of the question is. Like, is it a hydrodynamic effect? Does it make a difference? Does it
Yeah.
harm the harbor?
Yeah,
It helps the harbor, it all helps the harbor.
okay.
I do think there is one restriction that could help us with that. And when the breakwater was built, originally,
Yeah.
the water went through the breakwater. And I think that's generally what the water's supposed to do, is go through the breakwaters. That's why they're heavy rocks with, voids.
Bigs,
Water
yeah.
goes in and out. Well, the southerly side of our breakwater is now almost level to the top row of stones. And how long is that
But
thing?
that's the concept, what happens with stone jetties.
Yeah,
Wherever you are in the world,
Yeah.
you're gonna get a buildup on one side and the other is stripped naked.
and
And
I
the water's moving
understand
around
that.
pretty fast around the
But it can't be
non-central.
helping the flushing of the
No,
harbor.
but that'll be a future engineering
Yes.
grant, because I
Yes.
mean, that's been talked about too for at least 10 years, but
Yeah.
that's a biggie.
So, we are prepared to get an article in under the wire
Mhm.
for 7.5. And what we should do sometime before the meeting
Soon, yeah.
is to sit down and divvy that up in correct allotments.
Yep. So I wouldn't mind, next week is gonna be kinda crazy with warrant articles, or is it, Dan? Do you have a lot
Well,
of
the warrant
meetings?
closes on the 26th, and
So
on the
that's one-
27th it goes to the printer.
So that's next Wednesday,
Yeah.
is it closes.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you if you feel available for a meeting. Do you guys feel you wanna see the warrant article? You can just ask Dan to see it, right?
Well, I'm gonna send it out to everybody,
Yeah,
and then just don't
yeah.
reply, I'll just send your comments
Yeah.
back to me, and then I'll incorporate them in.
And, yeah, I mean, meet in beginning of March.
Or April.
Well, let's
Your
see,
brain is catching.
when do we get to
today.
start seeing the
I
5
can't believe it's
million
the end of March.
from the Army Corps of Engineers actually take place?
Yeah,
Do they have anyone that, they had talked about not wanting to put it out when dredging was at its peak of the season because they weren't gonna get as much for their money. And I'd be interested to hear how long their process is gonna take.
So they're working on their work plan,
Yeah,
and they've told us the earliest they'll finish their work plan is October of 2019. So that's the earliest that we'd actually see,
then
have it in
they,
writing, basically, everything's confirmed.
and the Army Corps puts it out to bid, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. They take
So
care of
that
everything.
process would take a minimum of month and a half,
Probably,
month and a half?
yeah,
2 months.
yeah.
So that would put us into when?
mid-November.
Of
So I don't expect to see them
20.
until
Of this
fall of 2020.
fall of 2020?
Yeah, because they're gonna write their work plan, then they're gonna have to put it out to bid. So the earliest they could get here with our window is the fall of 2020.
So when we go see Charlie Baker, we can
21.
accurately say it won't be until, well, it would be the far side of 2020.
2021 maybe. I mean, so when I first got on this committee, we were saying that was even feasible to dredge into January, or somebody threw that out. Is that, depends on the weather. We've had some nice Decembers.
They close the end of December for the right whale, we wouldn't be able to
Okay.
dump any soil, so.
Gotta think of the animals and the turtles.
Yeah, yeah.
Once the channel is done up to, well, let's just say you can't get emergency funding for them or an additional work order to go beyond, what is it, the launching ramp, you'd be going beyond a little bit
To the launch ramp. for
to
the
get to the
federal
launch
project.
ramp. You wouldn't be able to do anything on the state side until you had a channel
Yeah.
at least to there.
Well, we do, if the federals get their job done, then that's right to the beginning of the state. The only part that wouldn't be included would be the north anchorage right in here to the launch ramp. And
Do you know how many yards that is?
Yeah, it's in your paper, isn't it?
Was it on this?
It's in the letter. I think it was 120,000 cubic yards.
Did you guys get a pretty good packet? Should I print some of these out for you guys?
I haven't, but that's my fault probably.
No, because there's been a lot of information. I wasn't sure if,
Well, 'cause the reason I
can
asked
put
that
it up,
is,
yeah.
if the Corps, let's say the Corps won't do that,
Won't go further.
then their budget, this money we would have approved at this, if it's approved at this meeting, would be entitled to be used for dredging, so that we could write a check if there happens to be, as long as we have the permit, thinking from a business point, okay?
Yep.
If we have a permit in hand and a check in hand, and whoever comes and dredge says they got an extra 3 weeks,
Yeah.
we could have that dredged,
Yeah,
correct? Because we have the check
yeah,
and we have the permit. So we're never,
My only concern is procurement, is we would have to arrange for that and, you know, we'd have to make sure that that's done in advance.
well, as long as if we know they're coming and we know that the federal government already said no, we could do it.
Yep.
That way they would probably, you would think they would be the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Because they don't want somebody else to.
Somebody else isn't gonna be able to bring all their equipment here.
Right, so you're probably
when
gonna
you've
pay
got
the same
equipment here already.
yardage
Yeah,
without the mobilization and demobilization part of it.
Yeah.
Because the feds in theory paid for that.
yeah, yeah.
So that amount of yardage, in theory, needs to be tightened up a little better once we get going.
Yep.
So that we can say we have 10 yards that we want to put out to bid.
Yep, yep.
To be a tag along to the Corps, excuse me, to the equipment the Corps has brought.
Yes.
And if they aren't the successful bidder, well then, but you would think they would be to finish
You would
up.
think so,
It'd be a
yeah.
bonus.
Yeah, yeah.
The job just got
Yeah.
that much bigger.
We just have to make sure we do it right,
Okay, well,
procurement-wise,
I'm-
so that they'd be all ready to go.
Staying in line with what Mike had mentioned first, to having multiple companies at that point in and, you know, kind of at the same time. While you were sitting there talking about that, I was thinking, there's no reason why we couldn't get to the state, and as soon as there's room enough to get around them, start the state stuff at the same time and save, I don't know, 5 or 6 months.
That's what I'm thinking too. I mean, again, it's all, it's all weather, but let's,
I don't think you have that
Hope for
much,
the best,
I don't
plan
think
for
your
the
window's
worst.
that big.
Yeah, the window has to be that September to December
22
31st.
That's why you wanna have as many barges
barges.
in there as you
Yeah.
can get. And still not hinder the other ones maneuvering in the harbor, but
they
that's
usually-
how you get through a situation of tight windows. You pick up the volume, and you do that by,
Well, the extra barges, they always put down deep hole anyways. They've always set moorings up down the bay for barges,
yeah.
even if they're full or empty. That way there, when the window comes to go.
The more you can dig in the window, the better off we'll be, and if it's just a matter of having other contracts involved at the same time, and it's definitely worth thinking about. You may be able to. So, I think we have our marching orders, and that is to get an article on the warrant
I'll get that taken care of.
for 7.5.
Yep.
And before we go to town meeting, we will divvy that up in what we may anticipate happening. It would allow us to, or do this, depending on which is in the best interest of the town.
And come up with a maintenance plan, right, which you already have,
Well, no.
mostly,
We
sort
can
of.
have Bourne Consulting go forward with that plan.
Okay,
As long as it
Can we?
doesn't tie us into not doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not
Maybe
ready
a
to
couple
buy
of
into what they
options,
said
yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
I may very well, but I haven't been told enough to believe there's no way the town can't do it themselves,
Yeah.
reasonably. I haven't heard the answer to that yet.
I'll just say, I don't think you were here when I discussed what the consultant had said. For us to start our own dredge company and then go out and try to dredge 400,000 cubic yards would be a little bit overwhelming for a new crew with no equipment.
Well, everybody starts at some
122
level.
days.
Well, you're not gonna get that done in one cycle anyways.
Well,
You're not gonna be moving 400, you'd be lucky if you get
that's why it'll
150.
be, if they're proposing 3 cycles.
Yeah,
But the consultant proposed, okay, the feds do theirs, there's 1 cycle. Then for the second cycle, you bring in, you have a dredge company that can bring in 3 plants and do the whole rest of it, the state job, in 1 season.
That's faster than you.
Yeah,
You
but
take 3 seasons.
the problem is, the only one that's gonna be that big is probably gonna be Cashman. You gotta pay through the
Well,
nose.
no, as a matter of fact, he mentioned somebody else, we're from New Bedford or something?
No, they're down in Narragansett right now.
Rhode Island, yeah.
Yeah,
That has
they're all,
enough equipment that could handle something like that.
they're all up and down the East Coast.
okay, so we get the town meeting article written. We do wanna notify foreign consultants that we want,
Some option plan.
right? We
Mike
want-
is gonna take care
We
of that.
want
Harbor
that, okay,
management plan.
okay.
I
So
don't
he's
know.
Dredge
gonna-
maintenance
Wait,
plan.
hold on, just pump the brakes once.
Okay,
We're gonna be telling town meeting that this involves a preventive maintenance plan. And I think that's all we need to do to show Jay Ash, is we have the money and the town has authorized us to borrow for that.
okay.
I don't know if it.
You don't wanna go into details.
I don't think you wanna do that yet.
Okay.
I don't
I,
either.
I
Good.
agree
just
with
don't think
Dennis,
it's good
because
business.
Okay,
I think that this, if we don't get anywhere with the state by doing this, why spend the money for the,
yeah,
to start with?
By getting that plan done before you hook the wagons to
okay.
the horse,
So all we
you
have to
could, you
do,
could very well inhibit our ability to maneuver later.
okay,
Then we're gonna have to say, well, that 80 grand for this thing, we just threw that out the window.
alright, so really all we're gonna do up until town meeting is tighten up the warrant article and presentation
Yeah, we're gonna,
and
yep,
let the town know that we need this for a maintenance plan for the state
and
funding.
there are options
Yeah,
that,
and, yeah,
we have looked at many options, and we
Okay.
know at a minimum, we're gonna spend this amount, no matter which way
Okay.
we go.
that's it, right? Anything else we're gonna do for the next, within the next month?
I think the only other, the thing is whether or not the communication with the Corps about emergency then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
I
Better talk
just,
to
I
them.
found the volumes for that anchorage area, it's 28,500 cubic yards.
So the question would be to the Corps, if they could do that, what is the projected time? So that if we don't have the Corps doing it, we know how to bid it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you ask the
yeah.
Corps if they'll do it under a maintenance thing, and they say no, how long do they expect? Because the channel's gonna take more time to dig than the area, because you can only leapfrog so what, because of the width.
Yep.
Once you get in there and you have the federal mooring basin dredge, there's room to maneuver. So it should take less time per yard in that square, so that we know whether or not that's 5 days, 2 months, you see what I'm saying?
Yep, yep.
So that if we can work at that angle, it may also help to say that this isn't realistic, or it is realistic, to tag on to the dredge being here for that first window.
Yeah,
So do we wanna meet in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Well,
I'm
let's see
looking at you
here.
guys that are
Let's see.
really busy.
Our deadline right now is town meeting.
Yep,
What we have to do with that, because we are a committee, I would assume, I don't know if we have to meet, do we have to, you don't need our committee's, okay for the article?
No.
Don't need it?
No.
What we
no, what we
re-
could do, we should do is say, dredging task force recommends, right? We would do that, which I assume,
The other thing that I
what you could do
Right.
right now, you could take a
Yeah, that's what I
motion
wanna
to say
do.
recommend.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that. And then we'll make one to adjourn.
yes,
I think it's vital that the wording of this article addresses preventive maintenance. And not to let it get it confused with the other aspects of it. We have to take our
Okay,
time.
keep it simple,
Uh,
then. All right.
I just want to be able to go up and see Charlie Baker
We want you to go.
with a recorded article that was approved that includes money for preventive maintenance. And we can tell him everything that we talked about today. But the fact of the matter is that we're authorized to borrow X amount, and it could be out of that 7, it would be out of
Yeah.
that 7.5. We've covered
All right,
ourselves.
so we have time.
And the words
Okay.
preventive maintenance have got to be in there.
Yep.
So let's have a motion to recommend the article and place it, to recommend the article that's being placed on the warrant.
I'll make that motion.
Anyone
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Okay.
What was the
Three-
count?
Yeah.
3-0.
Okay.
Motion
It's
to
still
adjourn?
I think I got
I'm a
everything.
Did you?
In 1 year, it's
I'm
gonna
a
be
ghost.
really tight. Okay.
Motion to
That would be
adjourn?
4-0, wouldn't it?
Anyone second the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
We're done.
So, great, thank you guys.